It's got kind of a 15 pages, so it's a lot of things. So we'll start. So thanks very much, and hi everyone, and welcome to the weekly live session number 100. A big milestone for myself and for my project engineers in Australia. And this is from a little bit of a mix of the series Engineering Qualification Validation in Australia, and the other series that I have, How to Get Your First Professional Job in Australia. And I would like to thank you all that have suggested the themes or the subjects to be tonight's live session. And as I said, there were two suggestions that were the most popular. So I'll be talking about the most common challenges that migrants they face in Australia, especially engineers, and also about the differences between the draftsperson, designer, and engineer. But first, for those that don't know me, my name is Gerson Ida. I'm the founder of www.engineersinaustralia.com, a website to share content of value and useful information to help you in your journey to validate your engineering qualification in Australia. And I also share information about workplace health and safety, environmental management, day-to-day of engineering in Australia, and about professional engineering recruitment as well. And if you haven't joined my Telegram group yet, you can use the link that I'm going to paste in the comments very, very soon to be part of the Engineering Qualification Validation Telegram group. Currently, I believe that I've got more than 830 or 40 people. And if you know another engineer that would benefit in having information about the validation process and job recruitment tips, please feel free to share the link with them. So I'm going to paste the link in YouTube, pasting the link in Facebook, and also I'm going to paste in Instagram. I actually have a platform that I can actually do these live sessions on Instagram. You probably realize that in Instagram looks like a bit different from the normal live sessions that people they usually do. That's because I use this platform. I think it's called instafeed.me. I gotta pay for that, but I can broadcast pretty much the same content simultaneously to YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram with the same quality. So, and I can keep an eye on the comments as well. So I'm just going to put in here so I can keep an eye on the comments in Facebook and YouTube as well. And if you have any questions, as I said, about the validation process or job recruitment, please write down in the comments and I will answering those during the live session. And as usual, to make things more interesting, tonight I'm going to share with you my free ebook. I'm going to show you my free ebook here. This is my free ebook that I wrote, I believe, last year or the year before even. And it's called The 10 Challenges That Majority of Overseas Engineers They Face When They Arrive in Australia. And this ebook is obviously with my experience. The challenges were the challenges that I see that I faced and that I see that most of engineers they face as well. So if you stay with me and if you interact with me in the Instagram post that I'm going to do a little bit later on, I will be posting in my Telegram the link for you to request your free copy of your ebook. It's not that big. In the picture looks like big, but it's not. It's got 38 pages, I think. And there's a lot of pictures and the letters are big. So obviously I couldn't really write too much. So, but There are some 10 challenges that I mentioned in there, and for those ones that are in Australia, I think it's a useful reading for you. And those ones that are still in your home country and planning to come to Australia, it's probably a good idea to read so you can familiarize yourself about some of the challenges that you may face when you arrive here in Australia. So stay tuned, and during the live session, I'm going to do that post in Instagram, and I would like you to like and put a comment in there so I can post the link for you to request your free ebook in the Telegram group. Okay, so some of the challenges. The book has 10 challenges, and I will be talking about probably about 4 or 5 challenges tonight because there's a lot of content to go through. So the first one is about the decision making. So, and this challenge, of course, is one of the most procrastinating. And why is that? The decision making to migrate, the decision making to leave your home country, the decision to leave your family, the decision to leave your friends, the decision to quit your jobs, the decision to, perhaps leave the comfort of your home, the security of your job, the warmth of your friends, and then come to a country that you don't know pretty much anyone. You don't really have references to get a job. Your career also is not really recognized. You got to work on that. And so this can be very, very difficult, and you can procrastinate a lot to make that decision. So a lot of people, they take many, many months, even years to decide whether to abandon everything to start a new life overseas. And these people certainly should not feel guilty. It is a decision that can affect both positively and negatively for the rest of their lives. In my case, the decision was made by my wife. She made the decision in a split second, and she convinced me very, very quick because she said that she was either going overseas with or without me. So, and that was very quick because she decided in February, and we left Brazil in May. So we didn't really have a lot of time to plan. And yeah, so in her case there wasn't any procrastination at all. So, and she probably was this scenario that I'm going to talk about now. On the other hand, for the first ones are the ones that procrastinate a lot, and they may take a lot of time, months and years, to decide to migrate and leave everything behind. On the other hand, there will be those ones who will make a quick decision and will begin to work with the documentation to put a plan in place as soon as possible. And once the decision is made to migrate, we put into practice all the theory we learned about planning, checklist, budget, research. Everything happens on time and with the expected quality. So that's usually probably the best case scenario. Wasn't our case because we were very, very quick. We didn't really have a lot of time to do many, many things. The other challenge that I would like to talk tonight is about the visa, the Australian visa. It can be the student visa, it can be the permanent resident visa, it can be a temporary visa, it can be any other visa that you need to apply for so you can come to Australia. And this is a challenge that many people of you will face. And for some of you, will be a showstopper. And for those that are not familiar with the expression showstopper here in Australia, it means that your dream has come to an end because it's not going to happen anymore. So if you don't have a visa to come to Australia, obviously it's going to be very, very difficult for you to come to Australia. Even now, well, now because obviously the frontiers and the borders are closed, nobody can pretty much come to Australia unless you are a permanent resident or if you are a citizen. And even the repatriation flights are fairly difficult to get. But a few will be able to recognize their qualification still in their country, and they will be able to apply for the Australian permanent residency visa, and they will have the opportunity to migrate with a slightly better situation. So that means that if you validate your qualification still in your home country, you can then apply. Obviously, there are other things that you need to do, English and the points and all the other documentation. But you have then the opportunity to apply for a lot of types of visas. You have a lot of type of visas that you can choose from. And if you get a permanent residency visa, you can then come to Australia. Well, if you can get a flight. Others, they come to Australia because they are employed by a company, and the company then sends people here to Australia. So obviously, with these borders being closed, it's more difficult because if you are not really a resident, a permanent resident, even if you are employed, I don't believe you can come to Australia. But in normal times, when the borders are opened, I've got a lot of friends that they used to work in companies in Brazil and in other countries in Europe, and their companies, they ended up transferring them here to Australia. So they came to Australia with a good job already, and obviously starting a new life here in Australia with a job in your area, it's much easier, and you don't really have all the difficulties that majority of us probably would face. At least I did, and my wife, we did. So that's what I say, that the vast majority of us, engineers and other professionals, will probably be on the way to becoming an international student. So you apply for a student visa, and then you come as an international student, either to study English or to study a degree at university or study a diploma or advanced diploma, etc. Take an English course, a vocational course. When I came here, I did a diploma of business, and my wife, she did general English. I know a lot of people that they come to do a university degree. Others, they come to do masters. Others, they come to do a PhD. So when you are in Brazil, then obviously you got to prepare all the necessary paperwork. When you come to Australia as an international student, you got to manage your time at school. And then you hopefully will get a first job here in Australia. And the first job can be in your area, most likely to be outside of your area. Like me, my first job was as a cleaner. I was cleaning carpets. I was removing chewy gums from carpets in a pub. I don't believe I did a very good job because the boss didn't call me the second time. But anyway, but there's nothing wrong with it. I then worked as a cleaner for like 10 months, cleaning toilets, and I did it with a very good spirit. I met very good people there, and I didn't really have any issues there. So I also worked in restaurants. I also worked in horse races, serving people, beverages and food. So, but there's nothing wrong with that. As an international student, you got to have an open mind for that. A lot of people, they don't have that open mind. They come here, they think they're going to get a job in their area straight away. I'll be open and honest. It is possible, but it's very difficult. So you got to be, unless you bring money to probably to stay here for 6 months or 1 year, whatever is the time that you want to stay here, you will have to have open mind to work in those jobs as well. and there's nothing wrong with that. A further complicating factor is that the Australian government has in place strict migration targets and reduce migrant vacancies to protect the economy and local employability. Although Australia needs a lot of migrants, especially now with the borders closed, we here in Australia, we can see that we really need people from overseas to do pretty much everything. It's not just fruit picking or harvesting as people usually think. Was watching an interview, I think it was last week or 2 weeks ago, from the hospitality industry, restaurants and chefs and wait staff. It's needed because a lot of those people, they are from overseas. They are international students. They are international chefs that are coming here. But now with the borders closed, they're not coming anymore. In restaurants, especially here in Queensland, that the COVID situation is slightly better than other places. The restaurants are employing and employing. They cannot find staff to employ. All right, so I think I got some questions there that I'm going to... Yes, from Deborah. Question 1, how hard do you think is to get a sponsor in an engineer job still living in Brazil? Yeah, thanks very much, Deborah, for the question. Nowadays, I'd say, and I'll be open and honest with you, Deborah, I think it's very difficult. And why do I say that? You got to think about, you got to put yourself in the shoes of the company here in Australia. So for somebody to hire someone, they've got few options. The first option is to, when you advertise and then you hire somebody from domestic, somebody that is already here. And I'd say that when you advertise a position nowadays, you will have a lot of applications. We advertised recently a few positions, and there are a lot of people applying. So for you to get any sponsor from a company, if you're still in Brazil, the company will probably have to be already advertised in the domestic market and couldn't get anybody. And then the company will have to then sponsor somebody and bring to Australia. And remember that you got to be a permanent resident or a citizen to come to Australia. Even if you get a job, I don't believe that a sponsor visa, as a temporary visa, you can come to Australia. I don't believe you can. So the company will have to sponsor you and get a permanent visa so you can come here. A recruitment agency will probably going to charge the company about $20,000 or $25,000 for the recruitment process. And then the immigration agent will probably charge another, I don't know, $10,000 or $15,000 for the immigration processes. And then there is the relocation costs that usually the company will pay for you to bring you here to Australia, which can be probably another $25,000, $30,000. That includes flights and negotiation with furniture and, half a container full of stuff. So the company can probably spend, by sponsoring somebody from overseas and bringing to Australia, about $75,000 to $100,000. And if they employ somebody domestically, they're probably going to spend $25,000 for the recruitment company. So there is like a $70,000 difference, which if they can find suitable applicants in the domestic market, they probably going to go with that. I know that's probably not good news, but I'm not here to give good news. I'm here to say the truth. And from someone that employs a lot, I employ a lot of people. We recruited a lot of people in the last few years, And in no recruitment procedures, we even consider to bring somebody from overseas, because the market here has enough suitable qualified engineers for in all levels, graduate engineers, junior engineers, medium kind of a medium level engineers, senior engineers, and high level engineers as well. The other question that you ask is, do you think it's a good idea to validate the engineer diploma with Engineers Australia while in Brazil? Yeah, that's a very good question, Deborah. And I believe that while the borders are closed, you got to take the opportunity and do everything that you can. So when the borders are open, you don't waste your time here. And what does that mean? It means that if you can talk to a migration agent and get a structured migration plan with you, and if your migration plan is about recognizing your skills or your qualification, then it's a good idea for you to recognize your qualification while you are in Brazil. So you can recognize your qualification there, which is a prerequisite. It's a requirement for you to apply for a skilled visa, for example. So once you recognize your qualification, then you can collect the other documents, and then you can apply for your permanent visa. And then you can wait in your country, especially if you are working in your area in Brazil, for example. You can still be working, you can still be making your income, you can save money, and you can then do your migration process while you are in Brazil. And let's say that in 1 year's time or 1.5 years' time, you get your permanent visa. You still work in Brazil, you save some money, you recognize your qualification, you got your permanent residency. In a year's time or 18 months' time, probably and hopefully, the Australian borders are going to be reopened. And then you can come here as a permanent resident, and you can apply for jobs while in Brazil. It's going to be much easier for a company to employ you if you are already a permanent resident. Or you can come here as a permanent resident, and you can start to look for a job. So I think it is a good idea, because then you are saving money. If you wait to come here to do your validation and your migration process, you're going to start in a year's time. And then it's going to take another probably year, 1.5 years until you get your permanent residency. So it's going to be 2.5 years. So if the borders were open, and if you wanted to come as an international student, yeah, that's great. You could do that. You could study, and then while you're studying, you can work 20 hours. You can then work on your validation and your migration process, and that's it. But while the borders are closed, you can't really come here as an international student. So perhaps it's a good idea to use the time to plan and to prepare yourself. The other question there is, hi Jerson, I'll apply my assessment as electrical engineering draftsperson. Can I describe some calculations done by me or only focus in drawings? That's a good question. As a draftsperson, there are some design components, and there are some calculations that you need to demonstrate as well. So you got to remember that even for an engineering associate, which is the category that you're applying for, the 16 competencies are still there. And competency, in your case, EA 2.3, is still about design, and you need to demonstrate some of the calculations there as well. And then, I don't know your name. Yeah, Danilo. Yeah, thanks. Danilo is also asking, do I take the risk to be recognized as electrical engineer instead of a draftsperson if I describe those calculations in my career episode? Yeah, you got to remember that it's not just the calculations. If you want to recognize your qualification as an electrical engineer, you got to make sure that the experiences that you're going to write in your career episodes, they do match the ANZ SEO occupation classification definition for the electrical engineer. And you are having the experiences at the level of the professional engineer. If your experiences are not according to the ANZ SEO occupation definition, or if the level is not really at the professional engineer level, then you gotta certainly consider to apply for the engineering technologies or engineering associate. All right, so what I'll do, I think I'm going to take a picture of the ebook, and then I'm going to post in my Instagram. Where is that? It's here. So free ebook. And I'm going to, I think I posted already. So what I'll do, my last post in Instagram is exactly the ebook. So what I would like you guys to do, so I can give you guys the link for you to request your PDF, I would like you to go to my Instagram and like that post and make a comment. What is your challenge? What is your challenge in migrating to Australia? So I'm actually going to put this in the question in YouTube and Facebook. So what is your challenge in migrating to Australia? So if you can put that in the comments, and if I have some interaction there, I will post in my Telegram group. I will post the link for you to request that PDF. So the PDF is free. There's no password this time, but you need to make some comments, and then you gotta put your name and your email address so you can get your PDF in your email. All right. The other challenge is really about the engineering qualification recognition. So this is certainly a challenge, and it's a very important one for you to overcome, because if you don't qualify, if you don't recognize your engineering qualification, it's probably going to be very difficult for you to apply for the majority of the visas that you can apply. So we're talking about the skilled visas. So it can be a sponsor visa, it can be a state sponsored, or can be an independent skilled, whatever. I'm not a registered migration agent, so I don't really know all the types of visa, but I know that majority of people will need the points when you validate your qualification. Australia migration process works in a points system, and the more points you have, the better are the chances for you to get your permanent visa or to get an invitation to apply for the visa. And when you recognize your qualification, you get certain points. So, and it's very difficult. 5 points is a lot of points. And I think that when you recognize your qualification, you get 15 points or something. So 15 points is a lot of points. If you don't qualify, if you don't recognize your qualification, you don't really get those 15 points. You're probably not going to achieve the minimum points for you to apply for a visa. So one thing that you need to do is to really think about how you can recognize your qualification. It's a good idea for you to download I'm going to show you the Engineers Australia booklet. There's the MSA Migration Skills Assessment booklet, and this is the current version, although it's March 2020, it's still current. And there are 5 pathways that you can validate your engineering qualification here in Australia. I'll go very quickly with that. The first one is the Australian qualification. Obviously, if you graduated in Australia and the course is accredited by Engineers Australia, you can apply straight away. The second, the third, and the fourth pathways, they are from the International Engineering Alliance, under the Washington Accord for Professional Engineers, under the Sydney Accord for Engineering Technologists, and under the Dublin Accord for Engineering Associates. So if you graduated from a country that is full signatory of those accords, and if you graduated in the year that those countries they became full signatories, you can then apply your recognition under those accords. And I believe that last year France is part of a special pathway as well. So if you graduated in France, I think from 2019, I think, you can then apply under the Washington Accord. But majority of engineers will have to apply under the CDR, which is the Competency Demonstration Report. And this is the pathway that I applied, being graduated in Brazil. Brazil is not a signatory of any of those accords, so I had to go through the CDR. And there are pretty much, I think, 25 countries that are signatories of those accords. And for example, from Latin America, I believe just Peru is a full signatory of the accord. So nobody else is signatory, so everybody else needs to do under the CDR. And the pathway number 5, which is the Competency Demonstration Report, will require you to have minimum English test results, and you can do either the IELTS, TOEFL, or PTE. You have to prepare and gather all the necessary documentation in English language, or if it's not in English, then you got to be translated by an authorized translator. You got to have your academic transcripts, your degree certificate, and other relevant academic documentation. Work references, if it is the case, and that means reference letters from your employers or former employers. You got to prepare your continuing professional development, your career episodes, 3 of them, and a summary statement. So, and obviously I'm not going to explain the whole process here, but there are 16 competencies as a professional engineer or as an engineering technologist or as an engineering associate that you need to demonstrate. And those 16 competencies, they are in the booklet, and you got to demonstrate to Engineers Australia assessor that you are competent in each of those competencies. So he or she can then approve your application, and then you can recognize your degree here in Australia. Is that difficult? Is that complex? I'd say that the process is simple. There's just 6 steps for the validation, but simple doesn't really mean easy. And because there are a lot of pages and a lot of words to be written, there are competencies that you need to address. And majority of people, especially engineers, they're not really good at writing. At least I wasn't. Nowadays, I probably consider myself improved and a little bit better in writing, but majority of you guys probably not very good at writing. Do you consider yourself as a good writer? Perhaps you put in the comments so I know. If you say yes, you are a good writer. If you say no, you're probably not a very good writer. So what do you consider yourself? Well, I'll have a sip of water here. No comments there? No. Yes, no. Good writer, not a good writer? Not sure? guys a bit shy? I think so, yes. People a bit shy. That's fine. That's okay. So I'll keep going. And I probably had a little bit of advantage because in Brazil I used to be a university teacher. I used to give some classes to the post-graduation course in Brazil, and also in Australia. Here I completed my certificate in training and assessment. So my first job here, outside of cleaning and waiter, etc., I was a consultant and a trainer. So I had to do my Australian qualification here to be able to train people. So I learned then how to address competencies. I learned how to understand the Australian way to assess competencies. So that's probably helped me to write my reports. Yeah, Jackie, I try to improve my writing. Yes, I think you gotta practice. The more you practice, luckier you get. That's what people say here. So the other challenge that I would like to talk about is exactly this one: English language and local culture. So obviously, this challenge will depend on your educational background, and when some people will have major problems, other people will have no problems. A lot of people, they studied English in their home countries, and they also had other overseas experiences. So when people then come to Australia, they have already some exposure to English, and although the Australian English is quite different from the American English, for example, but you can get used to a little bit quicker and easier than those ones that don't really speak anything. So you got to remember that you will have to do one of the 3 tests: IELTS, TOEFL, or PTE, and you will have to have minimum scores in each of the 4 bands: writing, listening, reading, and speaking. So IELTS, for example, you got to have at least 6 in each of those 4 bands. Is it difficult? Is it easy? When I did my tests, once I arrived here in Australia, after a few months already, I did my IELTS test. And my test was fairly good because I studied English in Brazil, I lived in Japan, and I was working in a company in Brazil where English was the official language there. So when I got my IELTS test, I think my average was about almost 8 in average. So I didn't really have difficulties to pass the English test for my qualification validation as well. But even though I knew that wasn't going to be an issue for me to get the minimum score, I wanted to get more score, because the more score you get in English, you get more points. And even though you could be fluent in English, do not underestimate these tests. I've seen a lot of people that they consider themselves very good in English, and they ended up not getting the minimum score in at least one of the bands. So I myself, in the weeks before the test, that was back in 2005, I think, or 2006, I don't remember more. I think it was 2005. I was listening cassette tapes. At that time, the car that I was driving, the company car, didn't have CD and just had a cassette tape player. So I managed to find somebody that had IELTS test preparation in cassette tapes. So I was listening and I was practicing, I was writing at home, just to kind of learn how to do the test itself. So that's another thing. You gotta know English, and also you gotta know how to do the tests, because those tests, they have a little bit of a, they're a little bit tricky to do it. You also gotta be paying attention that the English test cannot be older than 2 years. So if you did an English test and then if you take long time to apply for your qualification validation, if they are more than 2 years, you have to do another one. So just be careful about that. The local culture is another challenge that I mentioned. As much as Australia is similar from many other countries, for example, Brazil, in my case, Australia is very similar to Brazil. The weather is good, you know, there are some colder weather in the south, and there are some very hot and warm and humid weather in the north and northeast. People are very friendly. They like to party. They drink a lot. They don't play a lot of soccer, but they love sports as well. So there's a lot of things that is very similar from Brazil. The natural resources, the size of cities. But you got to remember that the settlement was totally different, and the local point of reference is totally different from the country we come from. So this reflects in the work environment. Those ones that have already work experience in Brazil, you will come to Australia, you start working here, and you will see that the work culture is different. Socialization also is a little bit more limited. Perhaps if you go in a happy hour, etc. But people at work, although they're friendly, etc., but socializing outside of work, I can't say that it's impossible. Obviously, I've got a lot of Australian friends, but it's not the same as, for example, work colleagues in Brazil, for example. So you gotta be very mindful about that. You need to get used to that. They're not very used to touching and hugging and kissing, etc. So people, they can get offended if you actually do that. So you just gotta be cautious and pay attention to the local culture before you kind of get in trouble with that. On the positive sides, we professionals from overseas, foreigners, we are seen as people who work very, very hard, and we don't really measure efforts to complete the tasks. And it is not surprise to see overseas engineers and overseas workers getting promotions in companies due to their hard work. So if you work really hard, companies will recognize that, and you will be able to get promotions, apply for higher jobs, and get those jobs there. Just checking any other comments there. No. All right, so keep going. Another challenge that I found, at least it happened to me, is the concept of being overqualified. Those ones, I don't know if those ones are those ones that are in Australia here. If you already suffer that feeling that because you are potentially overqualified, you were not really called for an interview, you were not shortlisted for an interview just because you've been deemed to be overqualified. It's certainly, put in the comments if you have had that feeling. It is very common to hear that such candidate did not succeed in the job interview because he or she was deemed to be overqualified. Mainly for us Brazilian engineers and other overseas engineers as well, as a rule of thumb, we finish school, we then go to university straight away, and soon after graduation, many of us, we are already enrolling ourselves in a specialization course or a master's degree, or some even completed their PhD as well, straight away after university. So, and then when you get to Australia, we find ourselves in a situation when we're trying to get a job as a graduate, or we're trying to get a job in an entry-level position, so we can, because it's more probably difficult to get already a job in a very senior level. You try to get in an entry-level position, and then the recruitment panel, they see your resume, and they see that you have this, not just a degree, but you have a specialization, you have a 1 or 2 master's degree, an MBA, and you've worked in this and that, etc. And then you consider as being overqualified. And this is certainly very frustrating as a candidate, because you know that you could perform the role very well with your extra qualities, your extra qualifications. You could be a very good asset to the company. After all, having more qualifications than the job needs would not be a bad thing, would it be? Well, we think probably that wouldn't, but companies probably think that if you are overqualified, you probably not really going to stick around too long. And sometimes when the panel of interviewers, they don't really select you as the preferred candidate, it could be, there are some reasons that I listed here that could be the reasons why you were not really the successful candidate in that job. The first ones, companies cannot pay according to their expectations. So even you saying that you're willing to accept a lower salary, companies will think, well, this candidate is very well qualified. It's got a lot of experience. We're offering not a lot. So they kind of, they don't really select you because they think that you're not going to be happy to get a job and receive as a salary much lower salary. So that's one of the reasons. The other reason is that companies, perhaps they think that you didn't understand what the work really is. So companies, they may think that in your journey to get a job, etc., and because you're coming from overseas, you quite didn't understand that the job is not really to be a manager. The job is to be a project manager assistant, for example. And but your qualifications and your experience, you could be the manager there. And because you're applying for an assistant position, companies may think that you probably got mixed up, and they don't really give you a job because the job is too low for your qualifications. Companies may also think that if you are hired, you will be bored, and you won't really enjoy working there. So many of us, I myself, and probably a lot of you guys already, you worked in senior positions and functions in your country of origins. Maybe you worked as a manager, you worked as a director, you worked in executive positions. And if you put that in your CV, and your employer will think, all right, this person here worked in very high level positions, and working as an assistant project manager, for example, this person is going to be bored. Is not going to enjoy working there because he or she had already a lot of other experiences. And for that reason, they may not choose you as a selected candidate. So there are certainly some of the reasons why people may not really choose you as a selected candidate. And what can you do to perhaps overcome this challenge? Obviously, I spoke about the challenges, and I want to talk about what can you do to overcome those challenges. The best thing is to understand the side of the employer and deal with those challenges face to face. And how you can do that? You can do that by explaining why you are genuinely interested in the job. That you are a newcomer to Australia, and that a less complex job will help you to better understand the Australian system, and that the goal is to grow with the company. And with regards to the salary expectation, You can openly say that you are aware that the salary for that job is lower than expected and that you are okay with that. Preferably, you would explain this in your cover letter, because if it's not clear in the cover letter for the panel of recruiters, they may not even shortlist you. If you put in your cover letter that your salary expectations, you're open to get a lower level salary because you're a newcomer, they then may ask you to come to an interview, and then you can explore during the interview. All right, it's been already almost 1 hour, so I will stop with the challenges, and I'm going to talk about the differences between designer, draftsperson, and engineer, which was another subject that people asked me. If you have more questions, please feel free to put in the comments. I can see other comments here. I'm just going to just double check that. All right. So first I'm going to talk about the definition of a draftsperson. So a draftsperson creates technical drawings, mostly used in construction and manufacturing, and they often work in conjunction with architects or engineers. The work that draftspersons do, they aid the construction of buildings, infrastructure, aircraft, electrical installations, mechanical equipments, etc., etc. And usually a draftsperson will use AutoCAD systems and Revit and other systems. I don't really know because I don't work with them, but that's what I hear, and that's the very quick research that I did. Some of the tasks and duties of a draftsperson will be meeting with clients and other construction professionals to understand briefs. They will be drawing sketches, plans, and designs. They will be estimating some material costs. They will be working to specifications, budgets, and timelines. They could be supervising engineering works. They could be conducting field and laboratory tests of construction materials and soils. They could be working with regulations and contract provisions, and they could be supervising repairs and maintenance. And then you can ask, Gerson, but how much would a draftsperson be receiving or be earning here in Australia? I asked some questions, and some people say that it's about 50 to 60. Sometimes a senior draftsperson can earn up to $75,000 per year. So anything between $50,000 and $75,000 per year, it's probably a good salary for a draftsperson in Australia. And we're talking about Australian dollars. And how can you become a draftsperson? Well, there are some courses that you can do. Sometimes you don't even have to have courses. Some companies, they hire people with the skills that they have. They may not have the qualification, but if you are after some visa and graduate visas, etc., it's a good idea to do one of those courses. But you can do a certificate in engineering, drafting, for example. There is a civil engineering draftsperson. There is a structural engineering draftsperson. There is mechanical engineering draftsperson. There is electrical engineering draftsperson as well. So pretty much in Portuguese, I'd say that is similar to cagista. So probably that would be those ones in Brazil. You probably understand that because the draftsperson is the one that mainly draws the plans using AutoCAD or another software. So now the definition of a designer, and I'm going to use the example of a civil designer because civil designer was the ones that asked me to talk about it. So if people that asked me were mechanical designer or electrical designer, I would talk about that. But those ones that asked me to to talk about it, they were civil designers. So, and civil designers, they also use a computer-aided design, AutoCAD programs, to draft, to produce, to scale, and fine-tune drawings and maps for key infrastructure and construction projects. And these may include roads, bridges, railways, earthworks, and commercial, industrial, and residential developments. The tasks and duties of a civil designer: preparing conceptual and formal design drawings using CAD programs or other engineering softwares for review by engineers. Interpreting civil engineering drawings and building plans. Preparing designs for land subdivisions, road infrastructure, drainage, sewer, and water systems. Ensuring designs take into account associated planning, survey, traffic, electrical, and landscaping requirements, and road maps and land surveys to note land grading, nearby structures, and other factors that could affect the placement of new installations. You can see that the civil designer is slightly more complex than just the draftsperson. And the most common annual salary for civil designers in Australia is between $90,000 to $110,000 per year. And civil designers, they may work within a team of project managers, engineers, designers, and drafters, and may be involved in determining material, labor, and other project costs. And how to become a civil designer? To become a civil designer, you're usually required to have completed some formal training, which may include a Bachelor of Engineering, majoring in Civil Engineering, or an associate degree in Engineering Technology. There's a lot of people that they do BTech, Bachelor of Technology, and then Engineering. So it's usually a 3 years degree course, while the Bachelor degree in Engineering is usually 4 years course in Australia. So you could be completing a qualification in Civil Engineering or Engineering Technology. There are some civil engineers that they are civil designers. So if you are a civil engineer, you can be a civil designer. But if you are a BTech, engineering technologist, you can be a civil designer, but you cannot do the work of a civil engineer. And now the definition of a civil engineer, for example, because those ones were the ones that suggested the themes as well. But professional engineers in general, obviously you can be then mechanical engineer, a chemical engineer, electrical engineer, production, plant, environmental, mining, etc. They all fall in the category of a professional engineer. But the civil engineers, they plan, they design, they supervise, and they construct projects that involve the built environment. And tasks and duties, they include analyze site locations and surroundings areas in order to determine the feasibility of a construction, develop detailed designs of plans using a range of computer software programs and resolve any design challenges that arise, manage budgets and project resources to ensure that the construction complies with relevant rules, regulations, and guidelines, and obviously calculate and analyze infrastructure projects and structures. Civil engineers, they usually they can work on public and private infrastructure projects and systems, including bridges, roads, airports, and mines, dams, ports, and harbors, factories, irrigation systems, and water supply and sewage treatment. And liaising with clients and other professionals is a significant part of a civil engineer role, in addition to monitoring staff on site. The most common annual salary for a civil engineer is between $100,000 and $120,000. Obviously, as a graduate civil engineer, your salary will probably going to start at about $60,000 per year. And how to become a civil engineer? You will have to do a university degree, what you call bachelor degree, in engineering with major in civil engineering, with 4 years course. To work independently as a Civ engineer, most states will require you to have a professional engineer's license. In Queensland, if you are going to provide professional engineering services, you need to be a registered professional engineer of Queensland, RPEQ, which then allows you to legally provide professional engineering services without being directly supervised. If you are not registered here in Queensland, you can provide those services as long as you are directly supervised by a registered professional engineer of Queensland. I am a professional engineer of Queensland. This is my card. That's the board. So I don't know if you can see that. There's the Board of Professional Engineers of Queensland. And we got to renew every year. And I'm under the civil college. So which means that I can work unsupervised and I can make engineering decisions under my qualification. All right. Going to remind you guys that my last post in Instagram, I would like to see some likes and some comments there. The comment is for the question, what is your challenge in migrating to Australia? So my last post is this one with the photo of the ebook, and the ebook that I just I mentioned some of the challenges in this live session. This ebook is a free ebook that I'm going to post in my Telegram group. Those ones not in my Telegram group, you can download the Telegram app, and then you can go to the comments, and the link to join my Telegram group is there. And also would like to just remind you guys that next month I'm going to do my online free workshop, and the workshop is called Engineering Qualification Validation in Australia, and it's going to start on Saturday, the 12th of June, 10 a.m. Brisbane time. Those ones in Brazil is going to be I think Friday the 11th, 9 p.m. So, and also I would like to thank you guys for those ones, especially those ones in Brazil and others, I don't know, in Colombia, waking up early to watch the live session and participate in the live session as well. And also I would like to just ask you, if you register to the workshop, please just double check that you get my email confirming your registration, because sometimes the email, it goes to the junk mail, or sometimes the email provider block the email and you don't really get the notifications of the workshop. All the notifications are going to be done via email. You're also going to put in the Telegram group, so you guys don't really miss out. But the main means of communication will be email. So it's a good idea to save my address and mark my email address as favorite or VIP, so your email provider recognizes as an email that you want to receive and doesn't really send to the junk mail or spam box. Okay, just going to check for last questions. And no more questions there in YouTube. Yeah, Danilo is saying that his experience in Brazil is as drafter. Yeah, well, if you're experienced as a drafter, Danilo, and if you want to use your work experience in your validation process, it's going to be a bit difficult to demonstrate as a professional engineer. If you want to validate your qualification as a professional engineer, perhaps you could use your academic experience. Remember that you don't need work experience to validate your qualification here in Australia. You can use your academic experience. So if you can get something from university, your final assignment, your TCC, or any other projects that you did while you were studying, you could use those. If they match, obviously, the ANZ SEO occupation definition, you could use those in your career episodes. All right, I don't think I've got any other question there. So I would like to thank you guys very much. And don't forget to go to my Instagram and like the post, the last post. And in the comments, answer the question, what is your challenge in migrating to Australia? And then once I have some engagement, I will put the link in the Telegram group so you can request a copy of the my free ebook. So other than that, thank you guys very much. And I will be here again on Sunday, 8:30 p.m. Next week. And I'm going to talk about another subject linked to the engineering qualification validation, or about how you can get your first professional job here in Australia. Thank you very much, and I'll see you then. Bye-bye.